2025 was another crazy year for video games. We saw the release of the Nintendo Switch 2 along with a new Mario Kart, 3D Donkey Kong game, and a Kirby Air Ride sequel of all things. We got out-of-nowhere smash hits like Clair Obscur Expedition 33 and Peak, and we got to see the release of several highly anticipated games with Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4, Metroid Prime 4, and of course, the big kahuna, Hollow Knight Silksong. I played a ton of games this year, new and in my backlog. So just like last year, I'm going to discuss every game I played this year and rank them. To clarify, this won't be ranking every game I played throughout the year, but it will be ranking every game I played and beat for the first time this year, or at least played enough of to have an opinion on it. You'll also remember from last year that I made a list of 20 games in my backlog that I wanted to focus on beating in 2025. Of course, I knew I wasn't going to get through all of them this year, but I figured creating that list would be a good way to get myself to play games in my backlog that I've really been looking forward to trying out. So you'll get to see how stupendously I failed at crossing off that list this year, but I'll save that discussion for towards the end of the video, where I will also highlight my plans for next year. Cause yeah, I want to make this an ongoing series to cap off every year. The 2024 ranking from last year is one of my favorite videos I've ever made, so I'd love to keep making these as long as you guys want to watch them. So, without further ado, let's get into every game I played in 2025, ranked. If you're a regular on my channel, you saw this one coming. For those who are unfamiliar with my video output, I generally try to put out more positive videos where I gush about games that I love, rather than criticizing games that I hate. Not that I'm against making critique videos or anything. If I have an idea for one that I really want to make, I will. I just tend to be more motivated to make praise videos on games that I love. However, my video on Dragon Drive is the one time that I've diverged from that pattern as of right now. This might be my least favorite Nintendo game of all time. Now, I know that sounds a bit dramatic, but there is genuinely not much positive I can say about this one. Dragon Drive is a wheelchair basketball game where you use the Joy-Con 2 as mice to move your character. It's an interesting enough idea on paper, but they went about making this game in the worst way possible, to the point where it interested basically no one. The game just looks so boring, and remember, this is Nintendo we're talking about. They are known for taking simple concepts and ideas and doing insanely creative things with them. This is not one of those times. The motion controls are frankly unfun to use, and it takes way more effort and practice than I'm willing to put in to fully understand the mechanics and get good at the game. And even if I wanted to get good at the game, there's no reason to because there's nothing to do in the game. There is no actual content on offer here other than continuously playing online matches, without a ranked mode by the way, or doing the short list of aggravating single-player missions. They couldn't even bother to make more than one court or even more than one theme to switch it up from the gray wasteland that the game uses. There are all of these obstacles and hazards that are used throughout the park for the single-player challenges, and yet they are nowhere to be seen in the actual matches. Thanks, Nintendo. $20 for this, man, I don't even want to call it a game, but I guess it technically is. $20 for this game is actual robbery, and I guarantee that you could find literally anything else to do with that money and it would be more enjoyable than Dragon Drive. Please avoid this one at all costs.
Welcome to the Nintendo Switch 2 system. How was the fall?
I am ashamed to admit that I am one of the few who have 100% completed Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. Look, I'm not proud of it either, but I did think the game was mildly enjoyable to play around the console launch. For those who are unaware, Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour is a, and I'm once again using this term very lightly here, game that launched with the Switch 2 that tells you about the features of the console while providing some minigames and tech demos to show off all of the new bells and whistles that the system has to offer. However, most of this game will just include you reading text and answering quiz questions. The minigames and tech demos can be kinda fun sometimes, but but this entire experience is just mind-numbingly boring. And it costs $10. If it were free, I'd be willing to look past a lot of this because at least you wouldn't lose anything other than your time and maybe your sanity by playing this game. But 10 smackaroos for what is effectively an interactive instruction manual is ridiculous. Despite all this, I kinda enjoyed playing this around the time of the system's launch. I got my Switch 2 at midnight on launch day, and it was a super fun time experiencing the console for the first time with everyone else and getting to play all of the new stuff on offer. We all know that happy feeling when we get a new game console in our hands, so it was fun to be able to learn about everything it had to offer and see all of those new features. I would not recommend this game to anyone nowadays, but for the time when it was new, it was a mildly enjoyable experience that I blew through in a couple of hours. So, good job, Welcome Tour. You somehow didn't get last place this year. But please never do this again, Nintendo.
Whoa, this is worthless.
It's less than worthless, my boy.
If you watched my video from last year, you might be wondering why this game is on the list, because I already talked about Super Mario Party Jamboree at the end of 2024. Well, I decided that for all of the games I played that got new Switch 2 Edition upgrades that include new content, I would rank their new content as if it were a DLC, which I think is a fair trade-off. So, how is the new content in the Jamboree Switch 2 Edition? It's certainly a game that exists. This is the best Switch 2 Edition to show off the new features of the console, like the Joy-Con 2 in mouse mode, the camera, and the microphone. However, when it comes to actually adding content, this is not worth $20 by a long shot. The new rule sets like Tag Team and Frenzy mode can be fun, and the new minigames that use the mouse are cool as well. But the main draw of this DLC, which are the Bowser Live and Carnival Coaster modes, are super lackluster. Plus, you can't even play them online with friends, which is the main enjoyment I got out of the original game. These modes are fun for a few minutes, but they aren't the reason I play Mario Party. If this DLC added new boards and characters on top of these other new additions, I think it would have been totally worth it. But as it stands, this is just an overpriced Switch 2 tech demo disguised as being new content for my favorite Mario Party game, which is a shame. I really liked playing this game last year, so I was hoping this new content would bring my friends and me back in, but it really didn't give us much to work with, unfortunately.
Watch out, I got it. No, it's okay, I'll get it. No, wait! We'll use the power of friendship. Oh shit.
It is still so weird to me that this game actually exists. Pokémon Friends is one of those Pokémon mobile games that got a Switch port for some reason, but this one is a bit different. Instead of going the usual free-to-play route, they actually made this game paid, which I can kind of appreciate considering what the rest of the gaming industry is like, except the mobile version is free-to-play. Admittedly, it's more like a free trial that lets you kind of experience the game, so to get the full experience, you gotta shell out $10. Oh, my bad, it costs $10 for just the base game. There are also 2 DLC packs that cost $15 each. I'm honestly not surprised. But what even is Pokémon Friends? This is a puzzle game where you do little puzzle challenges to get yarn to craft Pokémon plushies. You can give these plushies to the residents of Think Town, yes, that's what it's actually called, or you can decorate your room with them. It's a cute little experience that can be kinda challenging in the later levels of each puzzle, and it's fun to collect all of the plushies. It's just nowhere close to being worth $40 for everything it has to offer. Now, I didn't buy any of the DLC, I just stuck with the $10 base game. However, I still think it's a bit lacking. $10 maybe would have been fair for all of the content, including the DLC, but as it is, this game is massively overpriced. If it looks like it would be interesting to you, I would just recommend downloading the free mobile version and deciding if you could see yourself playing it any more than what is offered in that demo. But as it stands, I have a hard time recommending this game to anyone.
Demon King? Secret Stone? Demon King. Secret Stone.
Secret Stone? Demon King?
I'm counting both of these Switch 2 editions as one entry because they are effectively the same thing for both games. I honestly debated whether I should even put these Switch 2 upgrades on the list because they really don't add a lot. The main draw here is the improved graphics, which do look incredible. Playing these games at 4K 60 FPS is a dream. Plus, other features like the shorter load times and HDR support are appreciated. The other features are kinda nothing burger additions that I rarely found myself really wanting to use while I was messing around with these games. The navigation and item sharing stuff is laughably pointless in my opinion, but the auto build sharing and play data with achievements is actually pretty cool. I could see myself maybe getting more use out of these new features if I did full replays of the games on Switch 2, but I mainly just spent my time with these games messing around and testing out how the games ran on this new console. I really think these upgrades should have been free like pretty much all of the $10 Switch 2 editions, but these ones still greatly improve two already incredible games, so they aren't horrible. If you remember my list from last year, you'll know that I included a few games that now fall into the genre of friend slop. I think I've made it clear that while I enjoy these kinds of games in short bursts, they aren't really my cup of tea because there isn't a consistent gameplay loop, and they get boring pretty quickly to me. I understand that the main appeal is to play this with friends and goof off, but I feel like there are plenty of other games out there that have that same appeal and still manage to create a satisfying and fun gameplay loop. And Repo is no exception from this. It's a fun game, but in my opinion, it's just a worse version of Lethal Company. It does have a few fun differences that can make it fun to play every once in a while, but overall, I'm not the biggest fan of it. If you like friend slop games, this one is sure to be right up your alley, but as someone who isn't a huge fan of the genre, this one just didn't really stick out to me. I'm sorry.
Who remembers the Infinity Stones?
Speaking of game genres I'm not a huge fan of, gacha games! I generally try to stay away from gacha games because I find them to be an unfulfilling time and money sink. But I do understand why people like them. However, I've heard several people talk pretty highly of Infinity Nikki, and it looked pretty fun and cute, so I figured I'd give it a shot. And I was actually pleasantly surprised by what it had to offer. It still has a lot of that gacha game sludge baked in, but the core gameplay experience was actually fun enough for me to look past that. This is an open-world platforming collect-a-thon mixed with a fashion dress-up game, which I find to be really unique and fun. It sets it apart from many other gacha games, which just tend to be bare-bones RPGs. I also never felt super pressured to spend money on the game, as you are still able to collect a lot of stuff while playing for free. Some of this could be because I only ended up playing the game for like 7 to 10 hours, but I still think this is my favorite gacha game that I've played. It's genuinely something I could see myself coming back to, which is great. If this game looks like it's your thing, you will most definitely have a good time. Also, as a little side note for this entry, my friend Ellie has requested to yap about the game for a minute, as she is way more into it than I am. So, take it away, Ellie.
Okay, hello. Side note from professional gacha addict Ellie. They kinda ruined Infinity Nikki with Eats a Land and the C-Star retcon in 1.5, and it really sucks that it took a year to get one main story update. And the amount needed if you want one of the gacha outfits is really unbalanced in comparison to how much you're earning per patch. If you're a collector or a completionist like me, it definitely makes it harder to enjoy the game, especially considering that things like outfit reruns have only happened once or twice for a few select outfits, then never again. And this isn't even considering the issues with Land, so things to keep in mind. Bye bye!
I can't see the end of the horizon! Hatsune Miku!
2025 was my year of being introduced to Vocaloid, where I really started to get into learning what this awesome community is all about, especially Hatsune Miku. So when I learned there was a rhythm game that was just Vocaloid music that I could use to not only play my favorite songs, but also get exposed to new ones, I was ecstatic. And then I played the game. I don't hate Project Diva, I actually think it's a decently high quality rhythm game. I just could not competently learn the controls no matter how hard I tried, so it just got frustrating to me. I wanted to be able to get really into this one, but the core gameplay is just not super fun to me personally. I think my biggest issue is that the notes for each chart can kinda just be all over the screen, so it's hard to tell what's actually going on, especially when you're trying to get better at the game and try harder levels. Plus, the background visuals can often be a huge distraction as much as I do love the cutscenes on their own. I'm not a Vocaloid expert, but this seems to be a pretty good rhythm game featuring songs from all the big voice banks, but it still has an emphasis on Hatsune Miku, of course. There's also a ton of fun customization options to mess around with, which is pretty cool. I understand why certain people love this game because there is a lot to get out of it, but I personally found that it just wasn't my thing because of the controls and mechanics. And that's okay. This game is still a fun time regardless, and I'd recommend it if you're interested.
Am I asleep? That doesn't make any sense. That'd mean he's sleeping too, and he and I are definitely not sleeping together.
This is a Switch 2 launch game that I don't regret picking up, but I just really didn't end up playing it as much as I would have liked to. Regardless, I still think Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S is a great time. It's an amazing fusion of two puzzle icons, Tetris and Puyo Puyo. If you want to just play those two games, you're completely covered, but you can also play a ton of other game modes that combine the two. There's also online multiplayer, a story mode, and even more to try out, which makes this a pretty beefy package. However, if you've played any of the other Puyo Puyo Tetris games, this doesn't seem to be anything crazy or new. I hadn't, so this game was a pretty fun time, but it might not be worth the $40 price tag for you. And this is also a game keycard, so there's that too. If you're a fan of arcade puzzle games, this is the perfect package that combines two of the best ones out there, so I totally recommend it. Sky is a pretty fun free-to-play game that one of my friends recently introduced me to, and I really like it. The game is beautiful, it's completely multiplayer, there's a ton of customization options to unlock, the music is incredible, and it's overall just a really fun time. So, why is it this low on the list? Well, my quote-unquote problem with this game is that the gameplay isn't really the main focus, nor is it that engaging. You kinda just fly around and explore, with there being some puzzles every once in a while. This is very much a game that you play to unwind and listen to music or watch something without having to be super engaged. And for that, I do appreciate it. However, it's not something I could see myself playing a whole ton on my own. Your first run can be beaten in like 3 or 4 hours, and while there are some collectibles to find in each level, that's about all there is in terms of other stuff to do. There are events and stuff as well to keep the game fresh, but none of it seemed super interesting to me. I also appreciate how the game is free to play without microtransactions being thrown in your face all the time. In the few hours that I played, I wasn't encouraged to buy anything even once, which I can definitely appreciate. Sky isn't a bad game by any means. I actually highly recommend it if it seems interesting to you. However, it's just not something I see myself continuously returning to like others might. Regardless, I think all of you should at least give this beautiful game a try. It's free, so you have nothing to lose.
Feast your eyes, Patrick.
What is it?
Kirby.
This is my favorite Switch 2 edition released so far because it actually adds a pretty substantial amount of content. The Star-Crossed World mini-campaign isn't super long, but it's a fun time and offers some of my favorite levels in the game. Plus, there are new figures, a new arena, and other gameplay additions to give you more stuff to do. I think this Switch 2 edition came out at the perfect time for me, cause I was itching to do a replay of this game, so being able to do that with enhanced graphics and new content was amazing. Even though this is my favorite Switch 2 edition upgrade, I still think $80 for the full experience is insanely overpriced. But I had a fun time with this one regardless. Kirby and the Forgotten Land was already an incredible game, that's one of my favorite Kirby games, and this upgrade just makes it even better. Fast Fusion is another smaller Switch 2 game I picked up at launch because I thought it looked pretty interesting. This is a sequel to the Switch 1 launch game Fast RMX, which I've had on my radar for a while, but I haven't gotten around to picking it up. So I figured this would be the best time to try out this series with a new game, and it's really fun. This is an incredibly fast-paced racing game similar to F-Zero. There isn't a ton on offer here in terms of content, but the core mechanics are really fun, and unlocking all of the tracks and vehicles while trying out the different modes is a fun time. Plus, it's only $15, so it's not super expensive, and it's definitely worth that price in my opinion. It can be kind of difficult to learn at first because of how fast everything is going, but once you get the hang of the mechanics, the game becomes really satisfying and fun. Similar to Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S, I didn't play this one as much as I wanted to because of how much was coming out at the Switch 2 launch. But I'd love to go back to this one and try to 100% it and do some of the higher difficulty races. Also, there were just a ton of racing games I played this year, and while this one is super fun and probably the most realistic of them, it didn't do as much to stand out due to its smaller scope.
Driving in my car right after a beer. Hey, that bomb is shaped like a deer.
Speaking of racing games, Mario Kart World. In the few months since this game came out, I've kept flip-flopping on it. One day I'll say it's the best game in the series, and then the next I'll say it's incredibly disappointing. But now that I've had half a year with this game, I can say that it falls somewhere in the middle of those two extremes. First, let's talk about the good. The new tracks are super well designed, the music is incredible, doing the P-switch missions in the open world is fun, and the expanded roster of characters is great. However, my main issue with this game is how, for every good thing it does, there's always a caveat to go along with it. Do you like the design of the 3-lap tracks? Well, too bad, because the Grand Prix and online worldwide races are dominated by intermission tracks, so you'll mostly be playing those. Knockout Tour is a great mode, but it's also mostly just playing through intermissions, and there aren't that many options for routes you can take, which makes it boring pretty fast. The open world is cool, but there's barely anything to do in it. The most substantial amount of content it offers is the P-switch missions, which you get practically nothing for doing, so there's not really a reason to go for them all. There's a ton of new racers here, but many of them are extremely annoying to unlock, and there are also a ton of series mainstays that are completely missing, like Diddy Kong, Petey Piranha, and the Miis. The costumes are a fun addition, but they are also annoying to unlock, and most characters don't even get any, with many of the characters that do only getting 1 or 2 costumes each. And all of that isn't even mentioning that this game costs $80, which is ludicrous. There is a lot to enjoy with this game, but there's also a lot to criticize, to the point where I kinda wish they just stuck to the traditional Mario Kart formula for this entry. I know they felt like they had to do something new because of how huge Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was after all of its DLC, but I don't think this was the solution, or at least I don't think they did it in the best way. I'm hoping that Smash Bros. On Switch 2 doesn't suffer the same fate. The game also hasn't gotten any substantial content updates in 6 months, unless you count ruining the online mode less than a month after launch and then drip feeding us fixes to it as content, but I don't. It's crazy how overpriced this game is, and yet there have been no content updates or events since it launched to keep people coming back. All in all though, Mario Kart World can still be a great time, and I already know that I will continue to play this at least every once in a while for years to come. For the average consumer, I think this game is a must-buy for Switch 2. However, if you're a more hardcore fan like I am, this one might leave you disappointed.
I say, what the devil is all the fuss about? I don't get it. What's in there? Bing bong! Hello!
So, you know how I was criticizing the friend slop genre earlier? Well, Peak is kind of the exception to that. Now, I'm still not a huge fan of the game because it's friend slop, but it's definitely my favorite game in this genre. Peak's gameplay emphasizes the silliness while also allowing people to lock in. It's pretty difficult, but also not impossible to win, which keeps you motivated. Instead of being changed each run, the map changes every day, meaning that if you and your friends are down for a long play session, you can master the routes on a given day's map to get to the peak. The controls are a little clunky, but that's honestly part of the fun. My only criticism is with how long each run can be. There's literally an achievement in the game for getting to the peak in less than an hour, which is kinda ridiculous. There have been several times where I've made it to the last 1 or 2 sections and spent like an hour playing just to die because I took the wrong route, and now I have no stamina, so I'm screwed. It can be really frustrating and demotivating at times, but I still really enjoy the game overall. Plus, Peak has been getting consistent updates and additions that have kept the game fresh and made it fun to come back to. Aggro Crab is one of my favorite indie studios, as they made one of my favorite games from last year, Another Crab's Treasure. So I'm super glad that Peak has gotten so much attention and that more people have their eyes on this amazing studio. All in all, Peak is a fun time, and I cannot recommend it enough to anyone interested in this type of game. It just still isn't especially my thing.
That was an illegal left, by the way.
Shut the fuck up! Yep, Sonic Racing beat Mario Kart. What a crazy time we live in. I really enjoyed my time with this game. It takes basically everything I wanted but didn't get from a new Mario Kart and puts it into a super high quality kart racer based on Sonic. All of the races are standard tracks, there's a ton of amazing vehicle and gadget customization, so many crossover characters are being added through free and paid DLC, and it has an enjoyable online mode with frequent events. While I prefer the core racing gameplay and the mode selection in Mario Kart World, the things that Sonic Racing CrossWorlds does right make it an incredible time. I felt compelled to try to unlock and do everything in this game, which I didn't really feel with Mario Kart World due to the staggering amount of pointless collectibles and annoying methods to unlock characters and costumes. Sure, the gameplay of Sonic Racing can get repetitive because a lot of the gameplay comes down to just playing the same tracks over and over again, and there aren't enough of them in my opinion. However, the tracks that are there are really fun, to the point where I even got A ranks on all of them in the time trial mode, which is something I barely even touched in Mario Kart World. I admire Sega for locking in and making the best Sonic Racing game they could, which to many beats the new Mario Kart. My main criticisms of the game have to do with the lack of tracks and additional modes, as well as the price. While I think $70 could maybe be worth it for everything on offer, including the DLC, that isn't reality. There is a digital deluxe edition that includes the full game with all the DLC, and it's $90, which is ridiculous. I think the DLC itself is worth the price for just it because of what it has to offer, but the base game being $70 is super overpriced. There are a lot of free characters, but the big crossover ones like Minecraft Steve and SpongeBob that got a ton of people interested in this game in the first place are locked behind a paywall, which just feels like a slap in the face after you've already spent $70 on the base game. I really do enjoy this game and thought it got totally robbed at the Game Awards, but it's very hard to recommend it at full price, just like with Mario Kart. Luckily, Sega games usually have steep sales pretty quickly after launch, so I'd say keep an eye out for that if you're interested. Bravely Default is the JRPG fan's JRPG. This is one of the most standard RPGs out there that I've played when it comes to the combat, story, and exploration, but that doesn't make it bad. While this game seems like it's ranked fairly low, that's only because the games above it are so great in my opinion. This is about the 8 out of 10 section, so keep that in mind when I talk about some of these games. Anyways, Bravely Default is a great time, but it isn't for everyone. The turn-based combat with the Brave and Default system is very interesting, but I do think it can get repetitive over time. The job system is really cool though. Classes in turn-based RPGs are always super interesting and fun to me, so I appreciated that. The story and characters are okay. As I said, it's a pretty standard JRPG, so there isn't anything too crazy that goes on, but I like the story enough to see it through to the end. And then you have the music, which is genuinely the best part of the game. This game's soundtrack is heavenly, to the point where that is the part I remember most about this game. If you've heard anything about this game before, it's most likely about how great the OST is. My main criticism with this game is that I feel like it could've and should've been shorter. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed my time with it and it's not Persona 5 levels of length, but as I alluded to earlier, the game got kind of repetitive and boring to me by the end, which is a shame. I'd still highly recommend this game, but only to people who like RPGs and are already familiar with them. This should not be your introduction to the genre, but if it is your thing, like it is for me, there is a lot to enjoy here. A Kirby Air Ride sequel was not on my bingo card for 2025, but I'm really glad it happened. This game is super fun, and it's directed by Sakurai, so you know there's a ton of love poured into it. I've never played the original Kirby Air Ride, but from what I can tell, this game takes everything great about the first game and adds a ton to it. Most of the characters and vehicles aren't unlocked from the start, which makes it fun to do all the challenges and all of the different modes to get everything. The different characters and vehicles actually have different moves and properties, so it's cool to try everything out as well. I've heard a lot of good things about City Trial over the years, and while it is super fun, it isn't the highlight of the game for me like it is for many others. I do really enjoy all of the modes on offer here, but the single player road trip mode was actually my favorite part. You basically go through a ton of mini challenges to level up your stats and unlock new vehicles in a sort of roguelite mode. It can get a bit repetitive towards the end, but it's still super fun. There's also a ton of random side things packed into this game, like the custom machines with the online shop and the gummies. While there is a lot of stuff here, I don't think there's enough content on offer to make it worth $70, but I still enjoyed my time with it. The game also isn't as multiplayer friendly as Mario Kart or even Sonic Racing. It can take a bit to learn the controls, which makes it not the best game to bring out at a party or gathering, and it's not as easy to pick up and play like Mario Kart. However, as a more hardcore fan, I really enjoyed this one. I plan on eventually doing all of the challenges because this is just a super fun game, but I do understand why others didn't click with it.
Gotta say, it's fantastic.
Say that again?
It's fantastic.
Okay, this is a game I talked about last year, so I know it shouldn't be eligible to be on the list, but I just want to talk about this game, okay? Marvel Rivals is my most played game of 2025, so I would be remiss not to include it here. There have been a ton of changes to the game since I made my ranking video last year, and I'm less of a casual player now, so I have a lot more to say. This has become my new favorite online multiplayer game, and I've had a ton of fun playing it with friends over the past year, and making new ones through our common interest in the game. Marvel Rivals has been consistently getting big updates that add new heroes and new limited time modes and events. Each half season usually changes up the meta quite a bit, which keeps the game consistently fresh and encourages you to pick up new heroes. I do think the change to 2-month seasons has made it feel like the game is going a little too fast at times, but I appreciate that the devs are committed to giving us a new hero every month. The core gameplay here is just really fun, and I'm constantly finding myself learning new characters and improving. I'm not super into competitive play, the highest rank I've gotten is Platinum, but I enjoy playing this game sorta casually with friends. My main criticisms have to do with the matchmaking and balancing. Some days it feels like I go on crazy losing streaks, which just isn't how the game used to be. Maybe it was just because everyone was learning the game, but in Season 0 and Season 1, the matches always felt even. There usually wasn't one person dominating the game, and teams weren't steamrolling each other. But now, I can play for like 2 or 3 hours on quick play and only win one game, which can be very frustrating at times. Marvel Rivals definitely adopts the philosophy of, if everyone is broken, no one will be, which makes the game chaotic and fun, but also frustrating at times. I know I've been saying a lot of negative things about this game, but I genuinely do love it. While I haven't been playing it as much in recent months as I did in the first half of the year, it's always super fun to jump back in, and I know I will continue to play this game for probably years to come.
Oh my... I'm sorry. Okay.
Now you die.
Donkey Kong Country Returns is an amazing 2D platformer that got a definitive edition this year on Nintendo Switch. It's an amazing time, and I'm super glad that I finally got around to playing it through this HD remaster, but I do have my problems with it. Most of them have to do with the remaster, which I just don't think looks that great. It's clear that they used the 3DS version as a base for this one, which is why the upscaled graphics look very similarly to Luigi's Mansion 2 HD from last year. Nintendo also left a lot of Retro Studios staff names, you know, the people who worked on the original game, out of the credits, which is just super scummy. And in general, this remaster doesn't add a lot for it to be worth $60 to me. The game launched on 3DS at $40, so this is just ridiculous. While I do have my problems with the remaster, this is still an incredible game, which is why it's ranked so highly. It has amazing level design, a banging soundtrack, and is fairly difficult too. I do think Tropical Freeze overshadows it a bit, but this is still phenomenal, and I think all platformer fans should give this game a shot.
Get ready for your 69th day of active service here at Last Defense Academy! In celebration of a badass day, we'll be playing music with a rock flavor all day!
Danganronpa is one of my gaming guilty pleasures that I haven't been able to fully escape over the years. I think a lot of people can relate to being a teenager during the pandemic and then getting into this visual novel series, and despite how much I've wanted to leave it behind me, it always seems to re-enter my life somehow. And this year, that happened through the 100-line Last Defense Academy. While this game isn't technically connected to Danganronpa, Kodaka, who is the creator of the series, was one of the lead developers on this game. The art style, writing, scenario, and characters are all very reminiscent of Danganronpa, but I think this game takes it to the next level. Instead of being a visual novel murder mystery, the 100-line is a tactical RPG mixed with many visual novel elements. While I enjoy visual novels, the fact that they combined it with the TRPG makes it pretty special to me, with the combat system being really fun. The story of the game revolves around a group of high school students being taken to a school, but instead of being forced to kill each other, they are told they have to fend off the school from aliens, which is where the RPG part comes in. They are told to defend the school against invaders for 100 days, but they aren't told much as to why they have to do this, how they got to the school in the first place, and who the invaders really are. It's a very interesting setup that is made even more interesting by how the game is structured. You see, completing 100 days will take approximately 30 to 35 hours, but then, for story reasons I won't spoil, you are given the opportunity to restart those 100 days and make decisions that alter the course of the story. There are 100 different endings in this game, and by experiencing different endings, you can piece together more of the story and discover the secrets of Last Defense Academy. While I haven't done much beyond my initial playthrough, unfortunately, I eventually plan on playing a ton more of this game and getting a lot of the endings to piece the full story together for myself. This is truly an underrated gem from this year that I think any fans of Danganronpa, or really just visual novels in general, should try out. Yeah, there isn't as much of an emphasis placed on battles as I would have liked, and the dialogue and writing can be a bit cringy and weird at times, but if you're willing to look past those things, there is a great game in here that I think more people should talk about. It honestly makes me really hopeful for Danganronpa 2x2 coming out next year.
Shut up, clock in, and load up.
Where are you going?
I don't know.
Pokémon Legends ZA was one of the most divisive games I played this year, and I can understand why. While I could spend an entire video talking about Pokémon Discourse and Game Freak as a company, that isn't what I'm here to do today. Legends ZA is a very flawed game, which is something I'm not ashamed to admit, but whoo boy did I still enjoy my time with it. As someone who is and always has been a massive Pokémon fan, this game was both comfortingly familiar and excitingly new in many ways. They've completely overhauled the combat system here, which is great, but it also isn't as deep as I would have liked. It's kinda like Xenoblade Chronicles for babies, which I enjoyed as a massive fan of Xenoblade, but it also left me yearning for more. The main series battle system is very simple, but it has a lot of depth to it, which just isn't really present here, unfortunately. A lot of people have criticized this game for only taking place in Lumio City, which I do agree with to some extent, but it also didn't really bother me because I knew what I was getting into here. Ever since the game was first announced, we knew about it being confined to Lumiose, which is unfortunate, but the game still feels full. While I would have liked to explore some other areas, Lumiose is big enough to warrant being the sole location of the game to me. I also really enjoy the new mega forms added, the story is great despite not having voice acting, which looks really out of place here, and shiny hunting in this game is so much fun. My username is literally MJ the Shiny Hunter, so you know that if a Pokemon game has fun shiny hunting, it's immediately pretty up there for me. The DLC is also pretty great, but I honestly think it should have just been the post-game. It acts as a direct follow-up to the main story, and it came out less than 2 months after the original game launched. If this were just part of the game, I feel like people would be a lot less mad about this one, but alas, Game Freak be greedy. I'm not gonna sit here and say that this game is peak and everyone should play it, but as a Pokemon fan, I enjoyed my time here. I understand why a lot of people hate this game, and I'm not trying to say they're wrong just because I found it fun, but I also think people should just be allowed to enjoy things they like, even if they are bad. This honestly might be something I talk about in its own separate video because I feel like I have a lot to say here. Overall though, I really enjoyed Pokemon Legends ZA, but that doesn't make it a high quality game that everyone will like.
Hi, Shadow. It's me, the devil. I love you.
Sonic and Shadow Generations was the first new game I played in 2025, and wow, was it a great way to start the year. First, let's talk about the things I don't like. Yeah, everything else is great. I kid. Sonic Generations is a great game. In fact, it's one of my favorite Sonic games, if you only count the first 2/3 of it. Everything before Crisis City is amazing. I found every level to be a blast, except for the Death Egg boss, but we don't talk about that. Crisis City is okay, I guess, but Rooftop Run and Planet Wisp are miserable. The modern Sonic stage for Rooftop Run is actually pretty good, but having one good level out of the final 6 is very disappointing. I found the final boss to be alright gameplay wise, but it's honestly pretty boring and doesn't do anything to make it fit into Sonic Generations. It is just the Sonic final boss of all time. The challenge stages are also incredibly annoying and are clearly there just to stretch out the playtime. And even then, I beat the whole thing in only 6 hours. I see why a lot of people love this game, but I do think it's just a tad bit overrated. But it's actually Shadow Generations that gives this game such a high placement. Shadow Generations might just be my favorite 3D Sonic game that I've played. It fixes almost everything from Generations and adds many things to stand out. For one, there aren't classic Shadow levels, but there are 3D and 2D acts in the boost gameplay style. This is great because the 3D levels are entirely 3D and the 2D levels are entirely 2D, so there's no switching between them mid-level. The levels are so well designed and have new mechanics that don't make me want to jump from the Space Colony arc. There is so much more polish here than in Generations when it comes to the controls and level design. I've always been critical of the boost formula because even when it's at its best, I don't think it's nearly as fun as the adventure formula. But Shadow Generations has me singing a different tune now because wow, this is really fun. It's almost as if the problem with the boost formula isn't the boost, but is instead because of bad level design. All of this is on top of a fully explorable hub world with collectibles to find, time trials and other platforming challenges, and frontier-style controls. The collectibles actually unlock stuff as you get access to music and artwork celebrating Shadow's history. There's so much more I could say about this game, but I think I'll have to leave it here for now. Shadow Generations is peak Sonic, and you don't even play as him. I see Sonic and Shadow Generations as a new, smaller campaign with a remaster of Generations thrown in to justify the $50 price tag. Sure, I could bring this game down a few pegs because Generation can be extremely annoying at times, but I see it as only a positive because it makes this one of the best Sonic packages out there. If you're a Sonic fan and you haven't checked this one out yet, you need to. A few years ago, I was introduced to the Monster Hunter series with the release of Monster Hunter Rise on Switch. I've dabbled in Monster Hunter World and some of the old school titles, but Rise is really the only game in the series that I've fully experienced. So when Wilds was announced, I was super excited to get to play a new Monster Hunter entry with everyone in the community. And this one is super fun and serves as an amazing entry point for new players. The Monster Hunter games can be a bit hard to get into, but once you start to understand the gameplay loop and things begin to click, it's an amazing time. All of the new monsters are great and the presentation is incredible. I really enjoy the cinematic feeling fights here, and with the amount of different weapon options, there's so much experimentation and depth. With each Monster Hunter game/expansion that I play, I try out a different weapon, and this time it was Insect Glaive, which I liked quite a bit. A lot of the new mechanics like the wound system, the seamless transition between base camp and the wilds, pun entirely intended, and the Sacred are very fun additions as well, but this game is also very familiar. I really enjoyed my time with Wilds, but I do still have my criticisms of it. The game's difficulty has been a hot topic when it comes to this game, which I definitely agree with. There are so many complex systems in this game, but because of how easy and breakable it can be at times, I didn't really learn a lot of them to the full extent. Because I've had prior experience with this series, I want to be challenged and fully understand the complex systems of the game, but I wasn't really required to do that to beat it. I know this itch could easily be scratched by playing some of the older games, but most of them aren't available on PC or modern consoles, with the servers also being down for most of the games on original hardware. I really hope Capcom ports 3U, 4U, and Gen U to PC at some point in a collection or something. That would be amazing, but we'll see, I guess. Something else to mention is that the game is horribly optimized for both PC and console, I've heard, which is surprising for Capcom. Monster Hunter Rise was one of the best looking and most optimized Switch 1 games, so it's weird that the next-gen entry runs so poorly and looks so bad at times. Also, in terms of content, there definitely wasn't enough here at launch, with the monster roster being a lot lower than I was hoping. I know there have been title updates and there will be the inevitable G-Rank expansion, but I still bought this game at launch for $70, so I wish there were a bit more here. Unfortunately, I haven't had the time to fully explore any of the post-launch updates, but I'm hoping to get around to that soon. I know I just spent a lot of time criticizing this game, but I really do love it. It's an amazing time hunting these monsters, but it's kind of just more of the same to me, with the game being even easier than its predecessors. This makes it a great place for new players or fans who want to just wail on a bunch of monsters, but for more hardcore fans or people looking for a challenge, it leaves something to be desired. Hopefully the expansion will alleviate some of this. Regardless, this game is still incredible, and I would recommend it to anyone looking to get into this wonderful series.
Shinji, we are out of time. Get in the Ava.
I've always been a huge fan of Xenoblade Chronicles. Well, more specifically, Xenoblade Chronicles 1. I tried to play 2, but I really just wasn't a huge fan of what I played and bounced off of it after a few hours. I do really want to go back to it eventually and give it a fair shot, because I have heard a lot of good things about it. But when I saw that Xenoblade X was getting a port on Switch, I knew that had to be my next exposure to the series. While I am a huge fan of this game, I don't think it lives up to the original, and it won't be for everyone. The story very much takes a backseat in this entry, and a lot of your gameplay will be spent exploring the open world of Mira and completing side quests. I personally enjoyed this gameplay loop as it was the perfect game for me to work on in the background while I did other things, but I understand that many will find this gameplay loop boring or repetitive. The combat is very similar to Xenoblade 1, but has more complex systems with the classes and the skells, which are the mechs you control in this game. Speaking of the skells, I was kind of iffy on this game until I unlocked them, when I started to really understand the gameplay loop here. Unfortunately, that takes about 30 hours, but once you do unlock the skells, it really opens up the game and makes it a lot more enjoyable. The open world here is top-notch, so being able to fly around it in a mech makes it even better. I do like the story overall,
but it definitely isn't the game's strong suit. A lot of people hate the epilogue Chapter 13 added in the definitive edition, but I actually really liked it. I can't say much about it because of spoilers, but I think a lot of people dislike it because of the 10-year buildup that was going into it. However, as someone who didn't have to experience that wait and didn't have crazy expectations as to what would happen, I thought it was a pretty good ending. All in all, Xenoblade Chronicles X is an amazing RPG, but it isn't for everyone as it has some pacing issues and the side quest heavy gameplay loop can get repetitive.
So I'm gonna stay here if you wanna scout ahead. It's about to get real nerdy in here.
Metroid Prime 4 was a surprisingly controversial release for how hyped up and anticipated the game had been. And yeah, I can see why. I personally really enjoyed my time with the game, but it does have some flaws, and I can understand why those flaws would be a deal breaker for some people. Pretty much everyone can agree that most of the game is incredible. The Metroid essence is definitely here in full force, and the exploration, abilities, and puzzles are amazing. The game also looks and sounds sublime. This is the best looking Switch 2 game we've seen so far, and I was genuinely blown away at certain points. However, the game also does a lot that goes against the core philosophy of Metroid, which is why it's a little bit lower on the list than I would have liked. The main things people are quick to point out are the NPC characters. Metroid is all about being isolated as you explore a harsh planet, and these NPCs can very much ruin that vibe. However, they aren't that bad. Miles Mackenzie's inclusion is miserable, and the parts where he was on screen were my least favorite parts of the game. The other NPCs aren't too bad though. It's just kinda awkward that they have so much dialogue and then Samus just says nothing. Then you have Soul Valley, which is the quote-unquote open world section of this game. It's a mostly barren desert that acts as a hub between areas that you can ride around on your bike, Viola. I actually quite like the bike, but I wish there were more to do here in Soul Valley. There are some shrines here and there and other things to find like the green crystals, but for how big the desert is, I feel like there should be way more here. Those are really my only two issues with the game, but they are pretty big parts of the game. Despite that though, they didn't ruin the experience for me, but I can understand why it does for many others, especially with how long this game has been hyped up. And to some extent, it does feel a bit too little too late. For how long we've waited, I know a lot of people expected something huge, but it's kinda just the next Metroid Prime game. It's an amazing Metroid Prime game, but I don't think it entirely lived up to the hype. Regardless, if you are a fan of the series or Metroidvanias in general, this game is definitely worth checking out, as I had an incredible time.
I'm Bowser Jr., and I'm gonna be taking my father now!
Super Mario Galaxy 2 is the one 3D Mario I hadn't played prior to this year, which is weird because I love the original Mario Galaxy. This game was on my backlog list this year, so when it was announced to be getting a remaster on Switch, I knew it was the perfect time to play it. And it's great. It introduces a ton of new mechanics and galaxies, an incredible soundtrack, and can even be pretty difficult at times. However, pretty much all of these points were also present in the original game, which I actually still prefer. There's just something about the original that speaks to me a lot more than this game does. Maybe it's the Comet Observatory, the cinematic story, or the emphasis on having more stars per galaxy in exchange for fewer galaxies, but I just like it more. I love all the new additions to Galaxy 2 though, don't get me wrong. Yoshi is amazing, and I actually wish he were in more levels, which is a good sign. The new power-ups and ideas introduced are also top-notch and super creative, so I understand why many people prefer this game. However, I feel like it's almost a bit too full with how many galaxies it has. It makes each individual one stand out less, and I find the galaxies in the first game to be much more memorable. The world map also makes this game feel much more linear, and the smaller hub world of Starship Mario is pretty disappointing, especially since Rosalina isn't even there. I really do love this game though, and with the emphasis Nintendo has been putting on Mario Galaxy as of late, I really hope we see a Super Mario Galaxy 3. This is an amazing 3D platformer, and I'm glad to say that I have now played every 3D Mario game.
So shut the f*** up, idiot!
With Persona 5 Royal being one of my favorite games of all time,
You'd think I would be jumping at the bit to play the spin-off sequel, but it's actually been sitting in my backlog for years. And I am so glad I got around to playing it this year. P5S is much more than just a spin-off, as it's a sequel to the original Persona 5 through and through. It expands on the story in so many ways and has a fairly large scope for a Warrior spin-off game. The story here is great and is pretty on par with the quality of vanilla Persona 5, which is awesome. The Persona mechanics are expertly implemented into the Warriors gameplay style, to the point where I would consider this my favorite Warriors game that I've played. Despite its simplicity on the surface, there's actually a lot to it, and I never got tired of it even towards the end. While the social sim mechanics of mainline Persona games aren't present and the fusion mechanic is very much simplified, I still enjoy this game a lot. This is by far the best Persona spin-off I've played, and I don't think enough people talk about it. If you love Persona 5 like I do, you need to give this game a shot. But if you haven't played P5, please don't start with this, cause this is a sequel, and it does not play when it comes to spoiling the original. Oh yeah, also I feel like I should mention that all my homies love Zenkichi. Oh man, do I love DK Bonanza. I'm pretty sure everyone was convinced that a new 3D Mario game would be coming out this year with the release of the Switch 2, so it was shocking to instead get a 3D Donkey Kong game developed by the Mario Odyssey team. And it's incredible. You can feel the very essence of that game's design here, but Bonanza manages to avoid feeling derivative because of how unique it is and how many new and different mechanics it introduces. Playing as DK and smashing stuff, transforming into powered-up animals, and collecting bananas and gold is so much fun. This feels like the first truly next-gen Nintendo game, and I honestly think it should have been the launch title for the Switch 2 instead of Mario Kart World. The level design is great, the music is top-notch, the banana transformations are awesome, the collecting is addicting and fun, and the story is actually quite interesting. I have a whole video talking about how great this game is, as well as comparing it to Mario Odyssey. You should totally watch that after you finish this video, by the way. So because of that, there isn't much else I can really say that I haven't already gone into during that video with my extended thoughts. This is an amazing 3D platformer that makes me very hopeful for Donkey Kong's future. In my opinion, this is the reason to buy a Switch 2, and it's gonna take a lot to overthrow this as my favorite Switch 2 game. Nintendo absolutely cooked here. Somehow, it took me almost 10 years to finally get around to beating Undertale. I played about half of the game around 2020, but eventually I dropped it for one reason or another. But with the release of Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4 earlier this year, I knew I had to finally finish this game. And honestly, there isn't much I can say that others haven't said already. This game redefined the turn-based RPG genre in several ways. You're encouraged and rewarded for not fighting the enemies you face, and the bullet hell gameplay system mixed with Mario and Luigi-like battle mechanics made this game truly one of a kind. However, the gameplay isn't really the star of the show here, at least in my opinion. The story, characters, and music along with the various endings are what make this game special. I do like the gameplay of course, but it can get kind of repetitive, and many mechanics such as the different soul colors are used once and then never expanded upon. I also think a lot of the game's humor hasn't aged super well, at least for me. I wasn't really active on the internet in the early 2010s, and this game uses a lot of that type of humor. Honestly though, reading the script after writing this section, it really isn't that bad. All in all though, the story is still amazing, and I think it is also made retroactively better with the existence of Deltarune, which is the parallel story to Undertale. While I certainly have my criticisms of the game, they are all outweighed by how inspiring it is. The game was largely made by one guy, who is now infamous in not just the indie scene, but in the entire gaming industry as a whole, Toby Fox. Of course, there were other people such as Temmie, whose contributions made the game what it is, but for the most part, it was just a guy making his dream come true, which is what makes this game so special to me. If you somehow haven't played Undertale yet, you are missing out.
The giant enemy spider.
I haven't gotten too invested in that many Metroidvania games. While I've always enjoyed and appreciated the genre, I haven't played that many of them other than a few entries in the Metroid series. But playing Hollow Knight earlier this year for the first time has made me fall in love with the genre. This game is incredible and deserves all of the praise and support it's gotten over the last few years. Hollow Knight has an incredibly interesting world that manages to be both vibrant and dreary, as well as alive and empty. The area design here is amazing from both a visual and gameplay perspective. There are a ton of creative enemies and bosses, and the abilities you unlock are amazing and actually make backtracking fun. While I appreciate the subtle storytelling in this game, it isn't entirely my thing, so the story wasn't a standout aspect of this game for me. I still enjoyed it though. The combat is very fun, and the charm system adds a ton of depth to your builds that allows you to try different strategies against difficult bosses. I do think it took a little bit for me to really be sold on this game, but once I got into it, I couldn't put the game down. I even felt compelled to find all of the collectibles and do mostly everything the game had to offer. I didn't beat the 4th and 5th Pantheons because they are really hard, and while I would like to beat them someday, I'd rather just focus on playing other games for the time being. I love that the game has this much challenge to it though. I do prefer Silksong over the original game, which you will see soon, but I still think Hollow Knight is an incredible time, and I would actually recommend it over Silksong if you haven't played either of them, or if you are unfamiliar with the genre. I'm super glad I finally got around to playing Hollow Knight, especially since it was just in time for its amazing sequel to come out just a few months later. Alright, now it's time to go over the honorable mentions for 2025's ranking. You might be wondering how there could be honorable mentions for a ranking like this, but I decided that in this section, I would at least mention some of the games that came out this year that I wanted to play but didn't get to, and mention games that I started but didn't finish or play enough of to form an opinion on them and feel comfortable including them in this video. So, let's get into it. When it comes to games that came out this year, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Split Fiction, Date Everything, Hades 2, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, Dispatch, Doom the Dark Ages, South of Midnight, and the Oblivion remake were all games I had my eye on this year, but never got around to playing them. Some of these, like Hyrule Warriors, Split Fiction, and Dispatch, I do plan on trying to play soon though. When it comes to games I started, Sonic Unleashed and Zelda Wind Waker were both on my backlog list, but I didn't end up playing them for more than a few hours each, and I didn't have enough time to get around to finishing them at the end of the year. I ended up playing a few hours of all 3 of the GameCube games that launched with Switch 2, being Wind Waker, F-Zero GX, and Soul Calibur 2, but there was so much going on at the time that I didn't get around to playing any more of them. Terraria and Ace Attorney 2 were others that I started, but just didn't play enough of. Then we have 3 special cases. Guilty Gear Strive was a game I got pretty into this year, but that didn't include playing much of the actual game. You see, my friends who introduced me to Guilty Gear are much more into the story and characters than actually playing the game. I have played some matches with them, and I'd like to get much more into this game in the future, but I also don't feel like I've experienced enough of the game to put it on a list like this, so you can probably expect it for next year. Then we have Your Turn to Die, which is a visual novel death game that I only haven't finished because I've been playing it with friends in real life. And you know how it is, we can only meet up in person so often. This is another one that will definitely be finished in 2026, and if you actually want to see my playthrough of the game, you can check out my friend's channel where she's been posting our reactions. And finally, we have Valhalla Cyberpunk Bartender Action. This is a drink-mixing visual novel game where you meet a ton of different people and learn about their lives, as well as an interesting futuristic world. It's a really fun game that I just haven't beaten yet for one specific reason. You see, the game's in-game days take place between December 13th and the New Year, so I decided to play one day of the game every day on the days that correspond to real life, which has been a very interesting and unique way to experience this game. So I won't finish this game until the very first day of 2026. Because of that, you can 100% expect this game to be on next year's list, and depending on when you are watching this video, I might already be done with it. And that's it for honorable mentions. Let's get into the top 5 games I played in 2025.
Look at this minion car. It's a minion car, banana.
I played the first Portal game a few years back, but for some reason, I never got around to playing the sequel despite owning it. This year, I finally decided to play this game, and oh my gosh, I was not ready. I really enjoyed Portal 1, but Portal 2 is a masterpiece. Despite only being released less than 4 years later, Portal 2 is so much better looking than the original. Normally, I'm not a huge graphics person, but I think it's important for this game because Portal 2 is a cinematic experience. I've heard that this is par for the course when it comes to Valve games, but the cutscenes in Portal 2 take place not just within the game's engine, but also within the POV of the player. It feels like you are experiencing the events that unfold, and I can only describe it as being like you're on a theme park ride. The story itself is also very compelling, and has so many more twists, turns, and lore moments than the original did. It's also very funny, and there were multiple moments where I laughed out loud. And all of that isn't even mentioning the gameplay. Portal 2 adds so many creative mechanics to the formula that leads to some really great puzzles that really made me think. It truly expands on the first game in every way, instead of being just a sequel that rehashes a lot. The level design is expertly crafted and the portal mechanic is used extremely well. The game also has an entirely separate co-op campaign where you can play with friends online, which is just as great from a gameplay perspective, but it isn't that story-driven. Both of the Portal games are all-time classics, but Portal 2 is a gaming masterpiece that everyone needs to play. I can't recommend this game enough.
It's like how you can never be a true gamer if you only ever play on easy mode.
This is another game I started a few years back, but didn't fully experience and appreciate until now. Neon White fills an incredibly specific gaming niche that I didn't even know existed, but I'm glad that it does. Neon White is a first-person shooter speedrunning card game with a cheesy story featuring freaky characters and a vibe that only appeals to people whose eyes light up when they see a hot topic. And I love it. The gameplay is so fluid and fun, the music is top-notch, and the speedrunning aspect is accessible to anyone while also having an incredibly competitive community. The main premise of this game is that you're
neons, sinners plucked from hell to do God's dirty work.
And you go through dozens of speedrunning levels where you have to defeat enemies and get to the end. You pick up weapon cards during each level that are used as guns to defeat enemies, or can be discarded to give you more movement options. There are a ton of creative ways these mechanics are used with a lot of variety. Once you start to understand the game, you get into a satisfying rhythm that is hard to describe. The game is also very replayable, with it emphasizing speedrunning and providing many insanely hard challenges to keep players busy even after the credits roll. I really wanted to get all of the Steam achievements for this game, but 2 of them require you to beat every level in the game in a row without dying, and I'm just not good enough to do that. Maybe I'll get around to it one day. Anyways, Neon White is an amazing game that is a must-play recommendation from me, but I can also understand why people aren't huge fans of this game because it's made for a very specific type of person, and that person just so happens to be me.
Change your mindset. I can't do it.
Garama!
It's all my fault.
Shaw!
Hollow Knight Silksong was one of the most anticipated games of all time before its release. I'm sure that many were worried with all of the hype and high expectations that the game wouldn't be able to live up to what people were expecting. But I can say confidently that this game delivered on everything it promised and more. This is by far my favorite Metroidvania game that I've played, and is one of my new favorite games of all time. It takes the already incredible Hollow Knight and expands upon it in every way while adding a ton of new gameplay elements. The movement in this game is incredibly fluid, with the combat feeling almost like a dance. The tool system expands on what Charms did in the original game by providing a ton more options and combinations for builds. The different crests allow Hornet to have completely different movesets for combat, with each one having some sort of gimmick that makes it useful in different situations. And you're gonna have plenty of time to try different things out because this game is hard. In fact, it's one of the hardest games I've ever played. However, the difficulty feels fair and requires a level of skill that is high,
but is also attainable. Beating a tough boss after countless attempts is one of the best feelings ever, and this game consistently provides those moments. There is also a ton of content here to sink your teeth into, with me easily putting over 60 hours into the game. Oh, and don't even get me started on the visuals and music. The game looks beautiful, and you can tell that Team Cherry used the success of the original game to make Silksong look as best as it possibly could. The soundtrack by Christopher Larkin is similarly incredible, but that doesn't come as much of a surprise considering he wrote the OST for the first game too, which was also peak. While I would recommend playing the original Hollow Knight first, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with this genre, this game is still a must play. Just be prepared to die over and over again because this game does not hold back. For $20, this is one of the best experiences out there, and there's still gonna be free DLC later down the line, so you can expect me to most likely talk about that on next year's list. This is the last game I beat in 2025, and oh boy, was it an incredible one to end on. You've most likely heard a ton of good things about this game already, and I can confirm as someone who was a bit skeptical going in that they are all true. You guys should already know at this point that RPGs are my favorite game genre, and this game is that genre perfected. The combat is very unique in the way that it requires more than just tactical skill from the player. There is still a lot of strategy required when it comes to battles, but you also need to time your button presses correctly when attacking and dodging or parrying enemy attacks. It adds an extra level of skill to the game, and parrying crazy combos is incredibly satisfying. The skill tree, weapon, Lumina point, and stat systems have a lot of depth to them, but they also aren't overly complicated. It's easy to wrap your head around, but there's also a lot of freedom here, which makes putting together builds feel great. Each party member brings something entirely unique to the table in a way that I've honestly never seen done this well in an RPG. Each character's quote-unquote gimmick is so unique and fun that I could see all of them being expanded upon into their own separate combat systems. It's crazy that all of this fits into one game. And then you have the story. Where do I even start? Honestly, I don't even want to say that much because the less you know going in, the better. What I will say is that the story here is top-notch and is one of the best narratives I've seen in a video game. The game is instantly hooking, the writing and dialogue is incredible, and the story takes so many twists and turns that constantly kept me engaged and guessing what would come next. For those of you who have played the game, my jaw was on the floor at the end of Act 2. I thought I had the game all figured out, and then it completely flipped the story on its head. And after that, I couldn't put the game down. The length of this game is also very digestible, with the pacing feeling consistently good and there being a ton of side stuff to do if you so desire. The visuals and soundtrack are also beautiful. The game's scenery had me awestruck, and even things as simple as the UI are done insanely well. And the soundtrack, oh my gosh. There are so many great songs here with so much variety too. We should normalize finding random artists on SoundCloud to make game OSTs. While I went into this game wanting to like Silksong more, I eventually just gave in, and I can say that while both games are incredible in their own ways, I like Expedition 33 more. Some might say that this game is overglazed, as the kids say, but I think it is worthy of every ounce of praise it gets. This is what I want to see more from in the gaming industry. Not live service games, not overpriced garbage, and not AI-generated slop. And if it takes everyone ranting and raving about how great Expedition 33 is to an almost annoying degree for gaming corporations to finally open their eyes and realize that they are not the backbones of this industry, then so be it. Indie studios are the future of gaming, and I hope that Sandfall Interactive absolutely sweeping at the Game Awards with Clair Obscur will have a positive impact. But even after all of that, there is still one game I played this year that tops this list. This one might come as a surprise for some of you, especially considering this game isn't even finished, but Deltarune has made such a positive impact on my life that it has to be number one here. I can concede that some games lower on this list might be better overall games and are fully finished projects,
but Deltarune holds a special place in my heart and is my personal favorite game I played this year. How a lot of people feel about Toby Fox's other project, Undertale, is how I feel about this game, and in my opinion, it improves upon that game in every way. The scope of this game is way larger to start. There are 7 chapters planned for this game, with 4 of them currently released. The combat is very similar to Undertale, but it is greatly expanded upon. This time, your party consists of 3 members that each have their own skills and abilities. The TP gauge allows you to perform special attacks or do special actions to help spare an enemy faster. While the RPG mechanics are still pretty simple, all things considered, these changes make it so there is so much more strategy involved. The bullet hell gameplay remains here as well, with there being a ton of new and interesting uses of this gameplay style as early as Chapter 1. The game also has a ton of tough fights in the form of its secret bosses that provide an incredible challenge and are insanely satisfying to beat. Then you have the story. It's a little bit hard to talk about it because it isn't finished, but what we do have so far is amazing. I have fallen in love with this world and its characters, and I am incredibly invested in the lore and mystery that this game presents. Honestly, I think that's one of my favorite things about this game. Coming up with theories and ideas as to where the story will go based on the cryptic clues that Toby has given us alongside the rest of the community has been incredible, and I am very excited to see what comes next. The themes and ideas that the game is setting up have me both anxiously awaiting the next chapter, and also feeling sad that this game will eventually have to come to an end. Just like Susie, I wish these adventures in the Dark World could continue forever. But that isn't reality, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Toby sticks the landing with this one. The pixel art here is incredible too. It's simple but iconic and has a ton of genuinely beautiful moments, especially in Chapter 4. But then you have the music. This might be my favorite game soundtrack of all time. It is incredible and I have so much love for it, not just because it's great, but because it has inspired me to continue composing my own music as well. And honestly, that applies to the whole game. I'm currently going to college for computer science to become a game developer, and when I think about my inspirations for this passion of mine, Deltarune instantly pops into my head. Toby Fox has inspired me so much, and if you happen to somehow be watching this, thank you. Deltarune has genuinely changed my life, and I cannot wait to see Chapter 5 next year. I could honestly yap about this game for hours, which I plan on doing once the full game is out. For now though, all I will say is do please try this game out for yourself. The first 2 chapters are completely free, and I promise you won't regret giving it a shot. Deltarune is a masterpiece, and is my favorite game I played in 2025. So, I guess this is it. I've been working on this video basically since I posted the 2024 ranking, so to see this project fully finished makes me so happy. I really enjoyed making this one, and if you made it all the way to the end, thank you. But there is still one elephant in the room I have not addressed, and that is the backlog. Out of the 20 games I challenged myself to beat in 2025, I only finished 5 of them. I knew I wasn't gonna be beating all of them, but I was still hoping to at least do a little bit better than this. The problem is that I spent a lot of time playing games in my backlog that weren't on the list. And putting 250 hours into Marvel Rivals this year probably didn't help either. So I am making a promise to you all. I'm not making a new backlog list for 2026, but I will finish the 15 remaining games from last year's list in 2026. This list includes Doom 2016, Kingdom Hearts, Yakuza Like a Dragon, Final Fantasy VII, Fallout 4, Going Under, Omori, Tomb Raider 2013, Okami HD, GTA 5, Zelda Wind Waker, The Last of Us, Hades, Zelda A Link Between Worlds, and Sonic Unleashed. Taking the main plus extra times on how long to beat for each of these games gives a combined 540 estimated hours it will take to finish all 15 games. Dividing that among 12 months means if I can spend 45 hours working on my backlog every month, I should be able to finish this list next year. It'll take a ton of work, especially considering I'm in school and will inevitably get distracted by new releases and other games in my backlog, but I think I can do it. And you know what? If I don't finish these 15 games in 2026, I promise to fully compose, produce, and sing an apology song for you guys next year as a form of punishment. Though, honestly, it sounds like it would be pretty fun to do anyways. I'm still gonna try to finish the list though, don't worry. In terms of 2026 plans for the channel, my goal is to get out one video each month. I found a lot of success this year in making smaller videos about newer game releases / game topics, so I want to continue that in 2026. I have a few ideas for videos I want to make, but for the most part, I'll try not to stress myself out too much and just make what I want to make. However, there are two big videos I want to get out next year for sure. Those being the Switch 2 1-year retrospective in June, and of course the 2026 ranking video in December. I'm planning on making these two big videos a tradition every year with a smaller video sprinkled in on the other months. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the new year and what it has to offer for both my channel and the games I'm playing. I hope all of you had a happy holiday, and here's to the end of an incredible year for gaming. I will see you all in 2026.